You are set, sir.
Okay. Okay, we'll call the Town Hall Renovation Project Building Committee to order. Mr. Barron, if you take the roll call, please.
All right, yeah, you can hear me, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. If members would signify their presence when their name is called. Councilor Bedrejko.
Here.
Councilor Minor.
Here.
Mr. Claffey. Mr. Mortensen.
Here.
Mr. Murtha.
Here.
Mr. Woods.
Here.
Mr. Harpy.
Here,
You have a quorum.
thank you. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the prior meeting minutes.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes, Ed Murtha.
Is there a second?
Second, Rod Mortensen.
Seconded by Mr. Mortensen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Unanimously. Public participation. Any member of the public wishing to speak? Do we have any one in the queue, James?
No one on at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We'll move to Downs for the project update. Frank?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. All right, so looking at the financial snapshot like we always do. In terms of approved change orders, we're up to $947,112.65. There was a small increase from our last meeting, about $1,400 that brought it up to that amount. That brings our revised GMP value to 28.7 million. Between pending and approximate changes that we have in the queue right now, that totals $32,508, which brings the grand total value of the GMP, if we were to accept everything between pending and approximate, to $28,740,609.65. Taking a look at the CM contingency, we started with 831,809. Approved contingencies to date total $601,560.89. And the pending amount within the CM contingency, keeping in mind that 20,000 is a give back to the owner that we've prepared this evening. Taking that into account, we've got $79,060.96 in pending, which would leave us roughly $150,000 in the CM contingency after tonight's meeting. Scrolling a little bit further down, within the owner's contingency, we started with 868,405. Based on the approvals, everything that was presented up to last meeting, totals 809,554.57. And between the pending and approximates would leave us with roughly 26,000 in owner contingency. And we'll get to that COP list in a minute. In terms of soft costs, I don't have anything to report. I have not tracked this throughout the course of the entire project. Still showing the $1,706,810 that we started with. The total project budget down below, I think it adjusted by a couple dollars from the last time we met, probably just some rounding there. So the project budget pretty much stays where it was from last month at $30,473,762. The budget that we all know is in place is that 28.8, which we're still under that amount when you factor everything in our GMP. Any questions so far on the financials?
Anyone have any questions of Frank? So we have roughly a total of $177,529 and some change combined contingency. excuse me, between the construction manager at risk and what's left of ours, which isn't a lot. But the total is 177,529.
Yep, that's correct, Joe.
Chairman, Counselor Minor has his hand raised.
Mr. Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking to see if there was any update on what the status was with the Department of Education with the EdSpec grant reimbursement, if that had been reconciled or if they were still working on that.
As far as I know, Mr. Giacomalowitz is working on that with the design team. And Downs provided Mr. Giacomalowitz his request, a total of the value management adds and minuses and the dollar associated with that. The state had asked for that. So he is moving forward with any information that they need, and he's providing them with that information in a very professional manner, in our opinion.
All right, thank you.
What's that total?
Well, I wouldn't want to throw an exact number out, but we've heard $1.5 million to $1.6 million.
That's off the cost of the project then.
Whatever the town decides to do with it, I understand that would go back to the town's coffers and they could apply it or decide to do some other issues with it.
But you're correct, Ed, that would come off the total cost of the project.
Okay, well, you heard it from a town council, Eddie. Now, it's going to be a while till that money comes in, according to Mr. Giacomalowitz, could be a year out. Because we were late getting it in at no fault of the committee. And that has backed up on a stacking order with the state. So it's going to be a while before you see that money, but it's my understanding that it has been approved by bond commission. But it's going to be a hold until the Administrative Service Department does its due diligence, which it's doing now, and then it goes into the stacking order of who's up next to bat. So I'll leave it to you of any influence that can be applied in a professional way to move that along. I don't know. That would be up to others. Okay, Frank?
Okay. All right. So jumping into the schedule to give you all a quick update here on completed work in progress, and then work on the horizon. We are winding down on this project. Hopefully, the next couple months, we'll be able to wrap most of this work up at this point. In terms of completed work, so the phase 2 demo I noted is substantially complete. We've got lion's share of the work behind us at this point. The building's essentially down. Anybody that drives by can see that. There's still a small demo debris pile that remains up in the southeast corner where the old gym was. That's getting knocked down over the next couple days. So by the end of the week, we're hopeful that that will be gone, and that'll pretty much put a wrap on the phase 2 demo. Stair 2 rubber. I think I had mentioned this at the last committee meeting. We're still waiting on some pieces to finish that off. It's substantially complete, but we've got some material to place at the landing, the bottom landing that goes into the basement area. That material shipped on Monday. I believe it's coming from Georgia, so it'll probably be a couple days on the road. And I would say by next week, we'd have our vendor back out here to install that. He already has the stair nosings. There's like 3 nosings that we needed to receive to complete the install. So we're looking at next week sometime to get that done. The temporary shoring is part of the reinforcement work at the PD. So that temporary shoring is in place. We've got shoring on the south wall of the PD and the back side, the east side of the PD as well. Work in progress, but we've begun to bring in structural fill. That's happening. The underground utilities, that's an ongoing effort, replacing sewer structures now. Storm is not too far behind. By next week, we'll be into that work. We are working through a number of items still as it relates to the punch list. We've whittled that down. We are also discussing with Joe as recent as this afternoon. We went over a list of owner items that they would like us to explore in terms of pricing. We can talk a little bit about that in a little while. I can mention some of those items to you. And then approved change order work, the stuff that's been approved, you know, we still have some items in the queue that we're getting done. Some of the stuff just off the top of my head, we put stickers on for the anti-climb spikes. I believe they're actually placards, they're not stickers. There's a mesh partition cage that goes around the data cabinet in the gymnasium. So that material is in the hands of our vendor, and I know they plan on putting together a crew to install that in the next week or so. Some camera moves, we can talk about that. That isn't actually in progress yet, but hopefully after tonight's meeting, we'll be able to do some of that work inside the building, some minor camera adjustments. Work on the horizon, again, just proceeding with the remaining reinforcement. This would be the permanent reinforcement now at the PD on the south and east side. We obviously want to get going on that work. That's a change that we've prepared for a vote this evening. The concrete work in terms of the base bid remains unchanged. We would just proceed with that. But there are some changes as far as the reinforcement goes. After we get through the reinforcement and bolting on the new concrete, we can then proceed with the framing and basically, building the rest of the skin on the outside of the PD. So that's all on the horizon, over the next few weeks. Critical items, obviously wrapping up the PD and really phase 2 in general. The parking lot is critical. We obviously want to look at anything we can do to try to expedite to a point where we can still put down the binder course. Based on our last master schedule update, we're showing binder around the middle of December, which is really cutting it close in terms of when the asphalt plants close. But we've made contact with one of the local plants. We still have a window of opportunity to pull this off. But at this point, with some of these changes like the reinforcement, is pushing some of this work into the beginning of January. So again, going back to our master schedule, we've got an end date right now of roughly the middle of January, the first to second week of January, roughly speaking. And once all that work is wrapped up to the middle of January, there would be some small comeback work, probably a couple weeks or so, to finish off the paving, to put a wearing course on, and wrap up the seeding and planting at some point in the spring when it makes sense to do that work.
Hey, Frank,
Yeah.
how much structural fill are you going to need? And where are you getting it from?
I don't have quantities off the top of my head. I kind of have a bird's eye view at this point, Ed. I'm not in the trenches with these guys. If you want to know quantities, I can give you quantities, but that material and getting that work done, that's already scheduled. So I'm not sure what you had in mind there, but if you want,
I was just wondering how much structural fill you're going to need and where you're getting it from, and the type.
Yeah, I can get back to you on that.
Please.
Okay. All right. Any other questions as it relates to the schedule? I mentioned the day 2. There's I call it day 2. I'm not sure what you want to refer to it as, but we have a number of items that, the owner has compiled in a list. They're referring to it as a punch list. I kind of think of it as a day 2 list. There's items that are being requested that aren't, I wouldn't consider them punch lists because we don't own them by contract. I'll give you one example. They have included on their list a pre-action system for the data rooms. We currently have a wet system in place, a conventional wet pipe system. They've asked for a pre-action system.
Hey,
And
Frank,
yeah.
can I interrupt you for a second? Can we
Sure.
hold that discussion until you actually get through your action items that you
Sure.
need to vote on?
Okay, yeah, we can come back to it.
And because we had a couple of people who have questions, and I just like to stay consistent so we can get you this approval. And you
Okay.
know that, okay? Thank you.
Not a
Excuse me,
pro-
Frankie. On the binder course, I believe the state doesn't recommend any binder or any asphalt work under 50 degrees.
Okay,
And, you know, we're talking December. I don't think you're going to get very many 50-degree days in December, even January, unless we get a hell of a thaw.
yeah, we'll go back to the asphalt plant and talk with Tri-State and get their take on it. Obviously, we don't do something that's gonna compromise a warranty or anything like that.
Yeah, which it could do.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Ed.
Mr. Chairman, Councilor Minor and then Councilor Bedrejko have their hands raised.
Okay, we'll go to Gail and then to Chris. Go ahead, Gail.
I guess it's a little bit of a follow-up with Ed's question. Can you just give me either a best case and a worst case time estimate on when the staff and public will be able to use the parking lot?
Well, again, going back to the dates I mentioned, you know, we're looking to put down binder by the middle of December and wrap up by the first to second week of January. So that's, you know, first, second week of January is when we would be looking to turn over the phase 2 and then return in the spring to finish what's left, basically the plantings and the final wearing course on the parking lot. But that doesn't mean you can't use the parking lot. You can still use it with a binder course.
You could use it with stone in there also, Frank.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Minor?
Oh, that was still raised from before, Joe. I'm all set.
Oh, okay. Gail, are you set?
Yeah, no, so a possible of January, but maybe not. You're gonna be pushing for mid-January.
Well, December
Count on you.
14th is the last day that the plant's open for material. And then to go to Eddie's point, depending on what the temperature is, we can put the binder down. But in any event, according to Frank, they'll be able to park even if it's crushed stone. There'll be parking.
Okay, great.
Okay, any other questions on that? Eddie?
No, I'm kind of all set.
Okay. Go ahead, Frank, please.
All right, well, we'll move on, Joe. Like you said, with the COPs that we've planned to present this evening, if we can scroll down to the COP section for review and approval. So I've got 6 COPs prepared tonight for a vote, starting with 300, which is the standby power. The last time we spoke, I think we had a verbal agreement to proceed with this work, and we had an estimate of roughly $6,000, if I recall correctly. So we came in under that, and you know, the work is complete. We ran 4 dedicated outlets for these pieces of equipment, or actually 2 freezers and 2 refrigerators, and they're all tied back to standby power source. So that came out to $4,716.46. 332, I mentioned this earlier, so that's a give back again on the contingency. I believe we returned some contingency at the last committee meeting, and we've come to the table again with another give back to assist with the town's budget constraints. So that's a give back of 20,000, and we'll continue to evaluate the contingency for sure. Next month, we'll look at it again and see what we can do in terms of give back to offset some of these costs that are coming against the owner's contingency. 334, so we've got a couple cameras that need to be relocated. We reviewed this with the town. There's actually a total of 3 cameras. The price we prepared is based on 2, but it's a small amount of work that we negotiated with the electrician to throw in for $1,022.10. 335 is the temporary shoring that I mentioned. It also includes the permanent reinforcement, which would be some masonry reinforcement to the existing walls on the south and east side, and also includes new steel that's going to reinforce or better connect, if you will, the south wall to the interior floor slab of the PD. So those costs combined, the shoring, the masonry, and the steel cost totals $25,635.18. 336 is a CM contingency item. This is to get hollow metal frames for the PD. We've got a couple new hollow metal frames for the PD, one on the west side by the dispatch, and then one on the east side, and 2 hollow metal doors. That's out of CM contingency, so there's no increase to the GMP. And then 337 is another contingency item to keep somebody here. We switched out a couple of guys. We had a superintendent here at one point. It wasn't the daytime super. And we also had a carpenter here to cover supervision while the demo work continued off shift, which we didn't originally carry in our staffing matrix. So that's also a contingency item. That all totals $11,373.74.
Are there any questions on the COPs? Frank, on COP 300, these provide standby power.
Yeah.
Have the, to your knowledge, have the refrigerators gone out again and then had to take advantage of the standby, or has that situation been resolved?
Yeah, I can't say, Joe, because I haven't been here. I haven't heard anything negative come back from the town, so I assume all is well.
Councilor Pacheco, committee member, please, Gail.
Yeah, following up on that, is this considered still kind of a temporary standby? Something additional has to be done? I noticed, there's a COP following under the item B, but if this is temporary, how long is it good for? Or
no, this is a permanent fix in terms of the power needs for these pieces of equipment. There's another COP, you're correct, in section B that addresses the ventilation concerns for these pieces of equipment. But in terms of the power, this is a permanent solution to address the power needs.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Murther, you had a question?
Yeah, I thought Mr. Mortensen was going to take a look at those refrigerators.
He did go down there. Mr. Mortensen, did you want to comment?
Well, there was a couple issues. One thing is the fact that if you're laying it out, the room is so small and they've stuffed both freezers and refrigerators in there. I thought one of the easy fixes would be is to move, excuse me, at least one of them. You even had trouble opening the door on one of them because it kind of banged into the other, to move at least one of the freezers, which gives off more heat because it's got a bigger compressor, to the bigger room. I don't know why they were all squished into that room. And I also noticed that the coils needed to be cleaned. They were totally blocked. No air could get into the compressors, which would also make it a little cooler. But this kind of goes to the part B about the putting some, trying to do something with the air in there. I mean, if it was my building, I would have said, gee, I wouldn't stick all of these all in one little teeny room. I would have moved them, at least one or two of them, out into the bigger room and moved some shelves around. But I'm assuming that that's not going to be done. So I don't know what the exact answer is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mortensen. Any other questions on these change orders? I'll let you take. Yes, James.
As Mr. Boutot has his hand raised.
Yes, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as the history on that, the Human Services Department informed me that they had inquired early on in the design phase about distributing the freezers and the refrigerators throughout the building, or in their area rather, not the building, between food pantry and the distribution room. But they were told that all freezer units needed to go in that small back room, and at that point that that heat would be vented out. So that's why all of those units are inside that rear room, because they're basically just doing what they were told as far as how the design was on that building. So
But
at
is
this
that the
point,
right thing?
again, I didn't design it. You know, I would think that if we take a look at it, the heat loads of those units, so you're putting out 90-degree worth of temperature coming out each unit, plus the other two refrigerators, you have, you know, approximately 200 degrees of heat coming inside that particular room. After the electrical work was done and tied to the emergency generator, we had the stable dedicated power source for the units. However, that heat was rolling in through the food pantry area and then coming out into a corridor, which was giving us some issues with the building HVAC that services that particular area. So we've had the person that maintains those freeze units has been out. Our facility staff cleaned the coils after the former mayor, Rod, I always call him, but
Call me
Rod.
call me whatever you like.
Yeah, okay. So he looked at it, you know, made a recommendation. Our guys came out, took the units apart as far as cleaning them and servicing them. We've had the units looked at several times. At the beginning, we had a hard time trying to keep both units running because they would go into a heat situation to where the room got too hot. We were getting at temperatures over 90 degrees, and then which would cause the circuit to go on one of the other units. So we're
Mr.
looking
Morrison,
at.
what's your opinion on this? I mean, you've got more experience than anybody else on this.
If you could just address the questions through the chair, please, so we
I'm
can.
sorry.
That's all right. I just don't want to have,
I'm sorry, Joe.
no problem. I just don't want to go into too many conversations, but Paul, are you finished with your comments first of all?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to give you that information.
Okay, appreciate that. Mr. Murtha, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Mr. Morrison, you've got the most experience of anybody on that. What is your opinion should be done?
Mr. Mortensen, did you want to comment on that?
I only play a food service person on TV, not in real life. No. You know, without being in there while everything's running, they are designed to run in kitchens are abnormally warm anyhow, hot even. The good thing is they are top mounted units, so they run a little cooler. But if Paul says it's getting 90, 100 degrees and it's affecting the air in the other room, the AC in the other room, I mean, I don't know. I don't know who or why somebody said they had to put all those in the same room, but that's the way it is now. So I don't know what can be done about it, to be honest with you.
Thank you. Mr. Minor, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think I'll hold it until we get down to the ventilation discussion.
Okay. Are there any other discussions on the COPs under discussion presently? Any other comments?
Joe, can I comment?
Mr. Murtha?
I think we're going to have a problem down the road with this.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
I think we're going to have a problem with this down the road. And I think we should address it now,
Okay.
some way.
Are there any other questions on the COPs? We did address the first part about it being underpowered and ascertain that the standby power went in. That's going to be voted on tonight, 300. And then there's a process being vetted currently to make certain it's the fix that you're talking about on number 338 under the magnitude and pending revisions to get the proper ventilation system in there. So there is discussion on that. There's still an exchange of thoughts with administration and Downs and the design team to make sure it's a permanent fix, because that's what we want to do for sure. Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the change orders under discussion for $11,373.74. I have a motion, please.
Make the motion that we accept all 6 of them.
Thank you, Mr. Murtha. A second.
Second, Rod Mortensen.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. Mr. Barron, consider to take action on fund transfers.
Yes, if you would, I'm looking for a motion to transfer from contingency into construction, as you usually do in order to pay for these.
Mr.
And the
Minor,
amount-
would you make that motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, make a motion to transfer from contingency to construction fund for the COPs approved this evening for $11,373.74.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, Ed Murtha.
Martha, second. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimously approved, so done. Okay. Frank, do you want to go back to the order of magnitude pending revisions?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, continuing on with section B, the orders of magnitude, we've got 11 COPs right now that we're currently, vetting either with design or with our subcontractors. The first one has to do with making a number of changes to the final signage package. We are circulating some details between ourselves and our signage vendor right now to hopefully narrow in on a final cost for these changes. Right now, we've got a rough order of magnitude pegged at $8,560. The flagpole bracket changes. So we just finalized this. We received a final design recommendation on how to modify the brackets that are there to accept the tapered flagpoles. We're within range of this estimate. I think we're a little bit higher than what we show here, but we'll be prepared to present that change at the next committee meeting. So right now we've got 8463. This will probably come in just under 10,000 when all said and done. The next couple items, those are allowances that will hang out there until we get to the end of the project and we can do a final reconciliation for the temporary toilets and the dumpster. I know at this point, we don't have any plans to bring in a 30-yard dumpster. I do know that we do plan on bringing in a couple portalets. However, with the demo and abatement winding down, they will take their portalets with them, and we'll need to provide something for the workers that are now coming in after the demo and abatement guys. So that shouldn't be a significant cost. And we're hoping that at the end of the day, we can give back more on these couple allowances. The next one after those two, 327, again, looking at the balance of the trade allowances that we're holding right now in the queue. We've got 33,300 as a potential give back. A good portion of that 33,300 is from the abatement allowances, which we are reviewing with Enviromed, the environmental hygienist working for the town. We're reviewing that with him to see if the numbers still hold and we can give all of this back. So we're in discussions with him and we'll have a better handle on this one for the next meeting. 328, the permanent electrical and HVAC, that's directly related to PD and putting permanent lighting solution in the upper floor, and then obviously heating within the stairwell. We've tossed around some options with the design team. I think they're close on putting something together for us so that we can finalize this one. Right now, we've got it pegged at almost 15 grand as a rough order of magnitude, just from the discussions we've had so far with the design team. 330, the structural mods. Again, this is at the police station. This is to deal with the soffit at the west face of the PD, which is that bow window side of the PD. When we went through the demo, we've got a soffit on the west side that is basically unsupported at the southwest corner. So this is to put back the new steel to support that. Right now it's temporarily shored. There's actually I believe I have a photo prepared of that condition. So you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So we've got a rough order of magnitude for that as well. We'll be prepared to present that at the next committee meeting. The next one, the irrigation system, I got to be honest, this one has been on the back burner. Obviously, with the structural concerns that we've been, faced with, those structural concerns have taken precedence, but we haven't, dropped this off the radar. At some point, if the committee wants us to pursue this, we can drill down on the scope for the irrigation system and finalize this one. With the limited information that we have so far from one vendor, we have a rough order of magnitude applied of almost 36 grand for that. 333, I'm just diving into. We've got some commissioning, potential commissioning agent adjustments within the building management system. We have a rough estimate there of a couple grand with markup. It's $2,116. 338, going back to the freezers and refrigerators and human services. This is to provide additional ventilation. Obviously, you heard Paul voice his concerns over the overheating issues. So we are looking at a more cost-effective option for this particular item. One of the options we're tossing around with the design team is placement of a condenser on the outside of the community center on the east side, and basically have this room operate off of its own split system with a mini split air conditioning system similar to what cooling systems are in place for all the data rooms. So we're looking at that, and hopefully we can bring the cost down from that roughly $20,000 rough order of magnitude that we have. The last one, 339, has to do with the winter weather situation that we're going to be running into with, in particular, the concrete and mason, and then running into January in the spring with some of this work. I'm going to, for the next meeting, put together what we call a time impact analysis to show some of the items that contributed to this. For example, the reinforcement work that we're doing now, and some of that preliminary investigation when the engineer came out and we corded off that area plays into this somewhat. Most recently, after talking with Enviromed, we understand that there's a small pocket of fuel contaminated soil in the vicinity of where this parking lot is going to go. So I didn't mention that before. This just came up today. I prepare these updates a couple of days ahead of time, so that's why I didn't make the list. But that is something that we're going to have to take into account. And at this point, it's too preliminary for me to really comment any further in terms of quantity. What we're hoping is that we can go back to the old profiles that we had of this soil. If you guys recall from way back, we had to deal with some fuel contaminated soil where the old entrance to the town hall was. And this is to deal with some remaining portions of that soil that now Enviromed is saying we have to, we have to excavate and dispose of properly. We were of the understanding that we could leave whatever was there when we completed the fuel contaminated soil removal as part of phase one. But it sounds like we're going to be dealing with it again. Hope to have, definitely will have more information for you guys at the next meeting. Joe, do you want to go over the other changes I mentioned from the owner's side?
Yeah, let me ask first of all, are there any questions of Frank on these pending revisions? Mr. Minor?
Thank you. Just real quick, Frank, on 338, you're talking about possibly conditioning the space with some type of mini split. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And Paul will also be on the line. My understanding is the issue is heat. It has nothing to do with cooling. It has everything to do with heat. Have we looked at the possibility of putting a thermostat controlled captive air unit in there just to exhaust out the heat if that becomes an issue, or is that not realistic?
Paul, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and also Councilor Minor. Again, we're leaving it up to the design team to take a look at it, but heat is a major issue. I don't know why exhaust, was not factored into the initial design for to address that. That might solve a big part of the problem, but the heat is having an impact on the other parts of the HVAC within the area.
Right. So if we can control the heat that's being built up in that space just by simply exhausting it out, is Chris on or is Tom? I thought Tom was on. Can anybody speak to it, or Mr. Chair?
Chris, are you there? Chris O'Neill,
Yeah, Joe, I'm here.
would you like to make comment on that?
Yeah, we had DTC looking at this, and I asked the question about exhaust versus the cooling after we came up with the cost for the cooling system, and they said their recommendation is the cooling over exhaust. And I'm not quite sure exactly where that comes from, but that's what their indication was to me, that the cooling was the better option than just exhausting the air.
Okay. Presuming that door is staying closed, which is what's exacerbating it with the heat building up in that room. Am I correct in that, Paul?
Right now, the door is staying open because if we close the door, then the temperatures would even go higher.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't know if it might make sense to have them readdress this because, again, we don't appear to have any issue with heating the space. It's exclusively eliminating the heat that's building up within it.
Yeah, that's been my understanding, and I hope the committee's understanding right along that this has been the heat generated actually from the refrigerators.
Right. And has nothing to do with
that they're blowing themselves out.
right.
So as I said, we have done step number one by putting a dedicated system in there so that if there is a surge, at least standby will come so that food doesn't get bad like it did last time, I guess, overnight, because it's at least one or two or both were down. So hopefully that is working and will continue to work while we work on the permanent fix. Any other questions on these issues?
Yes, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Murtha, please.
Frank, that contaminated area in the back, how big of an area is it, roughly?
Well, like I said, Ed, this is very preliminary. I don't even have a complete sense of how much we're dealing with. It's a fairly small area. I know that doesn't give you a lot of information. We could be talking about roughly a 10 by 10 area. But in terms of the depth, Ed, I really, I can't say. I just found out about this earlier.
Okay.
Gail, you had a question, please.
I think I answered my own question, but I just want to make sure. Most of these are going against the owner's contingency, correct?
Well, there's been a back and forth where the Downs has been allowing X number of dollars back into our contingency or showing it as an allowance or a credit to us.
Okay.
So I guess on balance, that would be correct.
Right. So taking into account these orders of magnitude, we still will have approximately 26,000 left in the owner's.
Yeah, that's been adjusted for, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, Mr. Murtha?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you have any further comment on these, Frank?
No.
Okay, thank you. Now we can go back to your earlier references to the town's, well, for lack of a better term, punch list.
Yeah, so there's not really a lot, but I just want to mention that we did talk about a list today. Actually, the town had generated the list a while back, and we were carrying it as a punch list. And again, it's kind of my pet peeve. I really hate to say the word punch list because it would imply that it's something that we didn't do as part of the contract. When you look at these items, for example, a pre-action system for the data rooms,
Why don't you explain that so the listening audience will understand what we're saying
Yeah,
here?
so just basic terms, instead of a conventional wet pipe system that you would find throughout the building, in the event of a fire or somebody sets off a head, I believe with a pre-action system there is a preset delay to setting off the system to sprinkle water in the room so that there's time to get equipment out, is my understanding. There's other types of systems we could use. Pre-action is one of them. We could also go with a dry chem system, similar to what we did in the vault, so that is a concern that the town raised that we want to address. Obviously, we'd love to fulfill the needs, but we have to look at the cost. And Councilor Bedrejko, pointed out that there's 26,000 left in the owner's contingency. So, at this point, we're down to the nitty gritty, if you will, right, with the owner's contingency. So we kind of have to look at the big picture and look at all these items as a whole and decide, which way we want to go. Or there's talk about an irrigation system. Obviously, we'd love to do that too, but we also have this other list, and the pre-action is a pretty significant cost. There's a few other items that the town has mentioned. Another item are toilet partitions, adding partitions. We actually did add partitions at the Board of Ed in the men's room for additional privacy when people enter the restroom. So there was a similar request to add partitions on the other floors. There's also on the owner's list to add FRP panels around the janitor's slop sinks, which makes sense. But again, it was not originally specified within the plans to do so. And then there's also another request out there for additional provisions for AV. We talked about that today, and it seems like it would be a pretty significant undertaking to do that one, just because of all the, what's currently in place in terms of utilities and finishes. We'd have to undo quite a bit of work to pull that off, to add provisions for AV in the conference rooms. But those are the big ones. There might be a few more out there that I have missed. Maybe if I missed something, Paul, maybe you could add something to this. But from what I recall, we discussed this afternoon that covered the highlights off of the owner's list.
Paul, did you want to make comment?
No, I just want to add that on some of those were observations that we went through as doing the initial building walkthrough pre-action system. Again, we I think had asked, and we discussed earlier today during one of our meetings on whether or not that was initially brought up by the design team to possibly go with a dry chemical-based solution inside your data rooms in order to avoid the risk of having water damage or have a sprinkler discharge over the top. I mean, you got some of our larger rooms, you got over $500,000 worth of equipment on that. Pre-action system would basically give you just like Frank discussed, it would basically be a dry system at the point of where those pipes are. So then that way you would need two items to take place. So then even if you had condition one that set off a sprinkler head, you'd have to have some other means to go out in an area of the building, whether it be smoke or fire in another area, before you would actually send water through that sprinkler head in those areas. But if it's not in the building, if it wasn't designed in the building, then that's just the risk that, it's my job. I have to let people know that we do have a risk there. And then, in the future, if we have to address it, we can address it in the future. But those are the conditions that we have right now.
Mr. Arcari, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that this issue was discussed early on in the project. There's a cost associated with having multiple types of systems in the building. It's not a code issue, but it certainly, as Paul points out, is ideal if you can have the funding to do it. In this particular case, if the funding's available, at this point, it's not a bad idea to do the pre-action system, and to some degree, the dry system is actually a better solution.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arcuri. Mr. Murtha, you wanted to make comment?
No, sir, I'm all set.
Okay, Gail, were you looking to make comment?
Well, yeah, I was just wondering, again, just consideration of costs, like the toilet partitions, the janitor sinks, the AV, the dry sprinklers. I mean, I know it's preferable to get everything done now, but are these things that could be added at a later date through a CIP process, when the town has more funds? I mean, it's not, if they're not done now, it doesn't mean that it couldn't be done in the future.
Frank, did you want to make comment on that?
Yeah, they could always be done, down the road. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Frank, would it be more expensive to go down the road with that?
You want to make a comment?
At this point, all the trades have pretty much packed up and gone home. So I don't, is there a premium to doing it, later versus, I guess, over the course of the project? I mean, if we explore, the work with the trades that we have, we could be seeing a premium from those guys to come back. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to clear up one point. It's not a perfect science, but it certainly is a process that we went through early on as a committee. At each step of the way, under the construction management at risk process, we looked at all expenses on a time frame basis. So the design team and Down started us off with a conceptual budget. Then we went to schematic budget. Then we went to design development budget. Then we went, of course, to the CD and the construction docs. And each way along the way, to the best of everybody's abilities and memories, we developed first what we called a value system, and then it was termed value management, where the committee evaluated things that we could afford and could not afford, and then the sense of keeping it or the ability to off it. In other words, eliminate it without majorly affecting the project. And as some of these items came up today, especially the one with the fire control warnings and systems, I pulled the list that David Herr worked very diligently on at Downs going back to 2016. And I took it through the schematic and design development. In design development, you're pretty much on your way in terms of cost and expenses of getting there. And this fire retardation phase, or whatever you want to refer, was not in there. So the committee never voted on it. So my assumption is that early on, when there were general discussions, it would have been done at scope review. We don't know when, but never came in as an item for discussion. So I just want to bring this to everyone's attention, not to escape responsibility, but to say that we weren't monkeys on a string through these discussions. There was a lengthy comment made and input made by each member of this project team as we went along, as we had to eliminate items. And if they were critical to safety, we didn't do it. But if it was critical to assistance of saving money without damaging the project, we did. So we put as much deliberation into those value management items as we added them and subtract them. And we relied on the professional staff comments at the time, as well as the owner's rep's comments, which I'll leave it to anybody's judgment about those, the previous owner's rep, to come to conclusions. So what I would recommend is we are early on in some ways with phase two in terms of financial exposure. And if you look, for example, at the shoring up that we had to do on the police dispatch area, we didn't anticipate that. That was an unknown, and that had a cost. And then we're told we don't have to dig up a certain area that has contaminant or fuel or spill because you did 90% of it during the early stage of this project. And then we're told, yeah, you do have to take it because somebody had deep changed their mind or something. I don't know. So I think the committee puts the project at a financial risk if we say yes to a number of things as valuable as they may be on the town side. Now, I know the finance director is going to do a reconciliation of what she has and the expenses. And her last comment to me was, we have enough to finish the project. So we're going to have to see if there's any breakage in that quote, finish the project number that Downs can provide to us, if they can, and then back that into these other expenses. But I'll be the bad guy, I guess, and say that we have about $177,500 or thereabouts between construction management contingency and the pitiful $26,000 that we have left. And it sounds like a lot of money, but we all know that if we get bitten in the wrong place of our anatomy here as we go through this, that's gonna go rapidly. So in good faith and on behalf of the committee, I would recommend that we do look at this situation for pricing that Paul brought up in terms of the IT areas of how we can forestall a process or a method that the sprinklers don't start raining from the heavens and soak IT situations and equipment that be more expensive to replace than if we stayed with the system we have. And I would hope the committee will agree with me. I discussed that at the project building. So I think we should get a price on that. I would measure it against the savings that we would realize, God forbid that, something should happen to that equipment, which is very expensive on its own right. So we will see a price come in on that. As far as the other items, they all have value, but I just don't think the committee's been very deliberative in terms of steering this project through some pretty tough waters with the assistance of Downs and administration and Colliers and the design team and everyone else that has played ball with us on this rocky field. And I think we've done a good job. Witness the guaranteed maximum price is still within the bond issue. It's very, very close, within $77,000, but it's very, very close. And I would compliment the finance director. She made damn sure, she and Jeff made very sure that the money that the council put away to pay for those other items like the generator and other things associated with this project that we didn't draw down against the bond issue to make this project work. That has been done in a very professional, deliberative way, and you can take it to the bank. That's been taken care of. So from a financial management standpoint, I would compliment the committee and all those associated with us that we have stayed on the course. It hasn't been easy, but we have stayed on the course. And I just don't see the ability to jump out to too many of these things unless, as was suggested, we do it in a post-closing arrangement. If we see the breakage when we get the final reconciliation that the finance director will do on where we are. Okay. Frank, did you have some pictures you wanted to show us?
Councilor Minor has a question, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I didn't see them. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple points quickly. First off, for Paul, on the AV discussion, without looking at anything Specifically, what is that? And is that in addition to what was approved at the council level for equipment and installation?
Paul, did you want to make comment?
Sure. So basically, in the original design, the AV data locations were identified by town staff, and they were put onto drawings by D'Agostino and Associates and presented when they went out to bid. At our table locations and display locations, so if you had a table in the center of a room, you have a display against the wall. We had shown on drawings where you actually had a box that would have been at the floor level, and you know, again, you're assuming that it's connected to the wall so that you can run your wires between the two. In the project, that did not occur. We did not get conduit from the floor box that was on the drawing to the wall. So in that case, we ended up having to modify and go to different equipment to pull off what we need to do with the AV project. So again, Mark Schweitzer is tracking that as far as E&O is concerned. But again, it was just something that as we're doing our walkthrough or at the beginning of the project, we identified early on.
Okay, and the second thing is, have you prepared, Frank, have you prepared any type of rough order of magnitude on the requested day 2 items that are open right now?
Frank, did you want to make comment?
The pre-action being one of those day 2 items, is that?
Yeah,
the list you're
yes.
referring to?
Correct.
I'm going to be working on that, so
Okay.
I'll have something prepared in the next couple of weeks here.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to show us some photos, Frank?
Yeah, so I've got a handful of photos. We can
These are the family pictures you told me about at Cape Cod, or
yeah,
when the world was different? No.
yeah, I wish. I really wish. Maybe next year.
Do you want to address any of these items first, Frank, or no?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks, James. Section C, the rejected COPs, I've got nothing new to report there. That's all the same stuff that we looked at last time. As far as requisitions are concerned, we just passed along the October billing. So through the end of October, in terms of work in place, we're at roughly 26.4 million. That would exclude retainage, and that leaves roughly 3.3 million. It does include the retainage, and the retainage held just over $1 million right now. So that percentage wise, you know, through the end of October, that puts us at right around 92%. And you know, obviously we're heading into another billing cycle here. By next week, we'll be preparing the next requisition for November, and will likely be 95 to 96% complete heading into the end of the year. All right, we can go to photos now, James. Just a handful. This first photo is what I was talking about earlier at the dispatch on the west side. When we got through the demo, you can see the, kind of hard to tell, you can see a temporary shoring post where we're holding up that corner of dispatch. We obviously have to come up with a permanent solution, and the permanent solution is to install a new column there, sit on a new concrete pier, and then encase that column with block and brick at the bottom of the column, and then it'll be finished off with EIFS to match the adjacent EIFS. Okay, next photo, please.
Excuse me 1 second, Frank. Ed Murtha, did you have a question on that?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm all set, Joe.
Go ahead, Frank.
Okay, so this is a shot of the PD again, this time on the south side. You can see to the right of the excavator, we've got some temporary shoring in place. That is the temporary shoring that's part of the COP that was presented earlier. If we go to the next photo, you can see the temporary shoring this time on the backside of PD. On the east side, the shoring posts. And basically what you're looking at is different vintages of construction. You've got a portion of that wall that was constructed in 1950. And then you've got the middle portion, if you will, that kind of bumps out from 1955. And then further down, you have the newer construction of the PD from, I think it was early 2000s, 2004, 2005, I want to say. Okay, next photo. It's just to give you a glimpse into the demo. You can see that pile kind of off to the right side of the photo. As I mentioned earlier, we are substantially complete with the demo, and that pile, and there is some remaining foundation work that has to be removed where the old gym used to be. Next photo, James. Just more operation out there, moving some dirt around. Again, not a lot really to show you guys in terms of the progress until we get into the full-blown reinforcement at the PD. Next.
Frank, none of that could be used as structural fill?
That's a question I would put back on Tri-State to see if that is something that's possible. I can certainly reach out to them and see what they say about it.
Instead of trucking new stuff in when we have stuff here already.
Right.
You check on that for us, Frank, and get back to us?
Sure. That's all I had, guys.
Okay. Any other business pertinent to the committee? Frank, do you want to give the committee a brief update on the units on the ceiling, on the roof of the building of the new town hall?
Yeah, so just real quick, we've got a unit, RTU number 1, that feeds the gym, that serves air to the gymnasium. So we've got some parts that are on order there to fix the temperature issues in the gym. I think we want to say a few days, maybe a little more than that, on getting those parts. Obviously, as soon as they come in, we'll replace. I think we have a bad control valve there. So we're waiting for that to come in. And then as far as some of the other issues that we're experiencing now as we head into winter, sure feels like winter today. It's pretty cold. There's a level of recommissioning in some of these units. The dedicated outdoor air units certainly need to be adjusted to be ready for the cold. And those adjustments have to be done at the unit, inside the unit, on some of the controls that are inherent with the pieces of equipment. So we've been in touch with, including the town has been in touch with the manufacturer's rep. So we do anticipate them coming out to start those adjustments and making tweaks to discharge air, set points, and things of that nature. So that is also going to be happening over the next few days.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arcuri, did you have any comment on the generator load test, the next load test for the generator? We discussed it at the project committee meeting today, and we were looking somewhere early in December, I believe.
I actually wasn't filled in on that, and I'll follow up on that and see what the status of that is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other business pertinent to the committee? I should, just to go back to Mr. Minor's point on the grant, one of the issues that administrative services was sensitive about was where was the investment and where their grant money is going to go in terms of any cutbacks and any material reductions from what they originally saw when we walked the plan, when Mr. Arcuri walked the plans in there. And I'm happy to report that there are none. There's nothing significant that we did to reduce either the Transition Academy's layout or embellishments or the third floor. And I want to thank Downs for going through the painstaking exercise of going through hundreds of items that he provided to Mr. Giacomalowitz. So I would say once they get this stuff and they can move forward, I don't know where we are in the stacking order. They've gotten all the accurate information, and whatever our responsibility was to move the grant along, we more than fulfilled, you, the committee members, so I appreciate that. I see two hands, but I don't see faces, James. You have to help me out.
Counselor Minor has his hand up, and then Mr. Arcari.
Okay, Mr. Arcari, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to report back. I spoke with Rusty Malik, my business partner, regarding the grant application. The grant application is actually going to be submitted in two parts. Lou is in the process of submitting a first application for what is approximately 90% of the construction cost of the project. I don't have the exact numbers on that because the state works directly with Lou. The second and final application for reimbursement will happen at the very end of the project when it's closed out, and all of the eligible, ineligible costs will be sort of summarized. So there'll be two parts to the application process.
And that's a requirement the state has because of their holdback?
Well, you can apply for, you can apply for the funding in different grabs, but you have to do one at the very end of the project because you want to capture any and all final potential costs.
I got you.
On a big school project, you might actually apply multiple times. In this case, we felt we should do one now at 90% to capture a huge chunk of the reimbursement, and then a second application to just clean up the grant application at the end of the project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arcari. Mr. Minor, did you want to make comment?
No, all set, stuck hand apparently.
Okay. All right, public participation. Any member of the public wishing to address the committee?
Still no one with us.
No one with us. Comments by committee members? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Ed Murtha.
Second on that?
Second, Don Woods.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Have a nice Thanksgiving, guys.
Bye-bye.
You too.
See ya.
Okay.